guys, this is Christine from your Theory and Practice of Editing class, English 503. And today I'm going to show you how to take a very basic tomato sauce recipe that you find on the internet and turn it into something amazing. The actual base of this recipe is based on what my great-grandmother used to do to make tomato sauce. Now, when she would make tomato sauce, she would start in the morning and cook all day. I don't have all day, unfortunately, so I'm going to show you a way to make a sauce that's really savory, has a lot of flavor, and it tastes like you've been cooking it for hours, but it doesn't take hours. So this is your basic tomato sauce recipe. You can find this on the internet. Pretty much if you enter tomato sauce, this is what you're going to get. A couple cans of tomatoes, onion, garlic, oregano, olive oil, salt, and pepper. Now what they don't tell you on this sauce is that in order for this to get to the tomato sauce or something that you would recognize as tomato sauce, you have to cook it for hours. This is the tomato sauce I'm going to be showing you how to make today. As you can see, I've made a few changes. First, I've replaced one of the whole peeled tomatoes cans with diced tomatoes. Second, I've added a can of tomato paste. I've doubled the amount of onion, and I'd say there's probably about half again as much garlic. I've also added half a pound of bacon, and to the oregano, I've added rosemary and basil, and a little bit of chipotle pepper seasoning. I've also added maple syrup and red wine vinegar, and I'll get into that once we're into the cooking phase, which is going to start right now. So, first thing we're going to do is get a nice big burner, like that, and we're going to put it about 2/3 of the way up. And so once we turn on our burner, we're going to go ahead and add our bacon. You can hear it hissing a little bit. There we go. Now, once enough of this bacon grease has cooked through, we're going to add the onions. Okay, so the bacon's been cooking for about 5 minutes. It's starting to crisp up around the edges a little bit, and it's starting to get a little translucent. So it's time to add the onion, which I have already cut up in a food processor. So go ahead and get that bad boy in there. There we go. Now with onion, you basically want to cook it until it starts to lose color. Okay, so the onions have been going for about 2.5 to 3 minutes, and as you can see, the color has changed rather significantly. They're no longer this bright pinky purple, they're sort of gold looking. That is the right spot. Now this next part is very important. You're going to add the minced garlic, and you're going to cook it for exactly 1 minute. If you cook it any longer than that, it's going to burn, and you don't want it to burn. Okay, so it's been almost exactly 1 minute, so I'm going to take my can of whole tomatoes right here, and I'm going to add that in next. Like so. There. All right. Now, this is a potato masher. You've probably seen them. This is the best thing for this phase, which is smushing the tomatoes. That's a very technical term, smush. Just going to want to go in and very gently, otherwise you're going to have tomato everywhere. Go in, smush down. Once you go through maybe a preliminary, like you've gotten to each one, you've gotten it up into a few pieces, you're going to let it simmer for maybe another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so it's been about, give or take, 5 minutes. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some more smushing. There. Now that it's started to stew, it's going to loosen up a lot. And you're going to be able to make a lot more headway. Now with a sauce like this, I like to leave it really chunky. I feel like that really adds to the sauce. You have big pieces of bacon, you've got big pieces of tomato. It all kind of works, and it's really lovely. So I'm not going to go too crazy with this.
Once I kind of get the pieces all down to maybe like a mouthful or so, I'm gonna leave it at. Next, I'm gonna add the rest of the ingredients. First, I'm gonna turn it all the way down to low because at this point, it's gonna go a little crazy. The first thing I'm gonna add is the tomato paste. I like to use a knife, get as much out of there as I can. This tomato paste, this is the magic stuff that's gonna make it taste like you slaved over it all day, even though you didn't. There we go. So first, the rosemary. I'm adding about a teaspoon of that. Next, the basil, about a teaspoon of that. Next, the oregano, about a teaspoon of that. Maybe a little more. You can never have too much oregano. Next, chipotle chili powder. Now this, I'm only gonna add like a pinch, maybe a quarter to a half a teaspoon, depending on how hot you want it. So just gonna do like a little quarter teaspoon of that. Like so. Next, I just like to add 2 spoonfuls of maple syrup. No major measuring going on here. I just take a regular old spoon from my flatware, pour it in. This is cooking, doesn't have to be exact. There we go. For the vinegar, you're going to want to probably pour that over something else because you don't want too much to go in your sauce. So I usually pour it over one of my open cans, like so, to make sure I'm adding just the right amount. Here we go. If you don't add the vinegar, what's going to happen is none of the flavors are going to blend with one another. Sometimes that's what you want, but in a tomato sauce, not so much. What the vinegar will do is that basically it'll do a little acid-base chemistry, it'll lower the pH of everything, and it'll start, being a very chemically reactive, nice environment for all of these flavors to start mixing and mingling. Last but not least, half teaspoon of salt. And then half teaspoon plain old black pepper. Same kind you find on your table. Now I'm gonna turn the heat back up to about, maybe on an electric stove, say about 33% or up about a third. So remember, we started at 2/3, now we're at about a third. If you're on a gas stove, I would just turn it on a pretty low flame. And now, that's just gonna sit and simmer until it's time to eat. Now, depending on how hot your stove is, you may need to turn the heat up or down, but you want it just low enough so it's not quite bubbling. If it starts bubbling, it's a little too high and you want to turn it down a little bit. This is going to be ready to eat in about 20 minutes.
Okay, we're all done. Now we're just waiting for the sauce to cook. Can't wait. Smells amazing. So I will include a PDF of this final recipe with all of the ingredients and all of the steps so that you can try this yourself if you're so inclined. And of course, feel free to ask me any questions you like. Bye.